Hey guys, welcome to Through the Bible Verse by Verse, a study of God's Word, a plain and simple study of God's Word, the Bible, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse. We are in Genesis chapter 2. We're starting in the beginning, so we are in Genesis chapter 2. Even though it might appear that chapter 2 is a retelling of the first chapter, it is not. You will find in the Bible that sometimes the writers will employ a technique of they're going to tell certain details, and then in the next chapter they're going to go back and just kind of center in on certain details they want to amplify. So in the first chapter we saw the first 6 days of creation. And then in chapter 2, we're going to see that God is going to focus on certain details of the creation. So it's not too telling. And I say that only because sometimes you will read critics, Bible critics, who will try to say and use this as one of the points of the Bible contradicting itself. It is not. So in chapter 2 verse 1 he says, so the heavens and the earth and everything in them were complete. Now remember, there are no chapter headings and verse headings in the original writing. It's a narrative form. So you know me, how I look. Chapter headings and verse headings are not inspired, and I think they're more problematic than they are helpful. They are helpful because only from this perspective the verses help us to locate. The chapters and heading help us to locate something. So if I say First Chronicles chapter 7 verse 14, if I remember that, I can easily I can locate that passage quicker than if I was just in a book going through. Okay, but that's the only benefit. That is really the only benefit for chapter, verses, and heading. The harm is they break up the flow of thought, because we instinctively stop reading or whatever, when normally we would read until there's a break in thought. So I'm not saying nothing to go to war over, but anyway, the point is that when we read this here, so the heavens and the earth and everything in them were created. So he had concluded chapter 1, or concluded thought, with as he created the heavens and the earth. Let me go back and read that. I'm going to read just verse 27, and then I'm going to go through and read this. This is day 6 after he created the heavens and the earth. He created the stars, the moons. He divided the waters on the land. He created the vegetation, the earth, and the marine life, plant life, tree life, birds, cattle. And then he says, so God, verse 27, so God created man in his own image. He created him in the image of God. He created them male and female. God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and every creature that crawls on the earth. God also said, look, I've given you every seed-bearing plant on the surface of the entire earth, and every tree and every tree whose fruit contains seed. This fruit will be for you, for all the wildlife of the earth, and for every bird of the sky, and for every creature that crawls on the earth, everything having a breath of life in it. I have given every green plant for food. And it was so. And God saw all that he made, and that it was very good. Evening came, and I want you to note this phrase again. Evening came, and then morning, the 6th day. And then he says, So the heavens and the earth and everything in them were completed. By the seventh day, God completed all his work he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work that he had done. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, for on it he rested from his work of creation. All right, I just wanted to see the thought right there. So again, as we see some of the details later on, we'll see why certain critics will say the Bible is contradictory. In one thing it says it's created this way, and in another it says it's created another. No, it's not, and we'll get to those details later. But he says right here that he completed his work. Again, notice he said that it was good, that all that he created is good. And remember, after each day, after each phase of creation, remember God said that it was good. And then as he comes to day 6, and as he created the man, now again in chapter 2 he's going to go back and he's going to give details of this creating of man, and it's going to be important for the entire biblical narrative, and that's why he's going to give us those details. But notice he said that everything that he saw was good, very good. In other words, this turnover operation, when God turned the operation over to Adam, everything was good. I kind of remember back in the days when Section 8, okay, they would insure the properties, right? This was going back in the 90s. If you had a Section 8 rental, if you were a landlord, you loved Section 8 because if your tenant moved out and damaged, in fact, you even hoped for the damage, because Section 8 would just write you a big check. They didn't care. Now, the reason why they didn't care and the reason why they didn't dispute it is because you had to meet a certain standard for them to approve the renting of it. Everything had to be done. Everything was perfect. They came and inspected and they signed off on it. Now, I'm using that illustration because here you see God signing off on the creation. It is good. Now, we also see this picture of what is good. And so now, if we want to measure what good is versus what is not good, we have a standard. We have a standard right now. Oh, and he says, let me go back. I'm going to go back and look at this last verse 31. And God saw all that he made, and that it was very good. Okay, so he saw that it was good. Now, that means what life is, what marriage, what relationships, what roles, man, male or female. In other words, as God is turning this over to Adam, all of this is good. Okay? So we know when we say something is good, like for example, let's say like this: filth, dirt, poverty, sickness, disease. We know all of this is not good. In God's definition of good, we know that those things are not good. Why? We know from what he has created, that's not good. James tells us that every good gift, every good and perfect gift comes from God. That God is going to give you what is good. We now have this definition of what is good. See, we have a picture now of what good is. You don't have to wonder. God is kind of giving us a glimpse, this picture. This is what good is. So when we see people killing themselves, we see people taking advantage of themselves, all of the bad. In other words, we have a measurement in which we could say this is good versus this is not good. Okay? This is good versus this is not good. Now, another thing is, notice he says here, so the heavens and the earth and everything in them were completed. By the seventh day, God completed his work and he rested. Now, I'm going to talk about, obviously, this rest. What does this rest mean right here? God completed his work and he had rested on the Sabbath day. And then he said God made it holy. The word holy means to be set apart. Now, basically, that's the basic meaning of holy. Now, a lot of people think holy is purity. It's not. However, if in the use of God, yes, it's got to be pure. But the idea simply means that when we talk about holy, holiness, the word, again, to be set apart for use. That's all that is. When Moses approaches the burning bush, God tells him, take off your sandals. The ground that you're standing on is holy. And for that time, that period of time that God was there, that ground was holy. Now, it wasn't holy. It did not continue to be holy. But it was holy for that time that God was there. That's it. It was holy. Now, we could go on a long list with this, right? Our bodies are supposed to be holy, right? Now, interesting, we'll be able to measure what is holy, what is not holy, what is clean, what is not unclean, what is good, what is evil, in terms of relationships, right? So anyway, so this day here that God sets apart now. Now, how do we know what the day is? Now, remember in chapter 1, we know that the day begins in the evening, right? Evening and morning came. That's the day cycle. It is a 24-hour cycle. We also now know that that 24-hour cycle is the Earth rotation, right? As it spins, as it makes one spin. So if you start at one point, and that the Earth orbit, the Earth itself spins, and it completes a 360-degree circle. That's an orbit. It takes 24 hours for the Earth to make one spin. That one spin, or that one circular, also is a day. We also know that the stars and the moon, that they were all made for days, months, years. Which also we now know that that is the time that while the Earth is making a orbit, a 24-hour orbit. In other words, it takes 24 hours for the orbit at one fixed point to spin. In other words, if you started, let's start at our western hemisphere, and you fix a point, and that the Earth spins around, takes one orbit to spin, right? It takes 24 hours to do that at a speed of 24,000 miles per hour, right? Per day. But we also know while it is orbiting at a 24-hour day, that it takes 365 days, right, for the Earth to make an orbit around the sun. Okay? So, remember, God established all of these days. Okay, so all of the creation, all of the work that God has done, he now says that he rests on the Sabbath. He rests not the Sabbath, but the seventh day. So at the end of the sixth day, the seventh day began evening. So this seventh day rest, he said, God blessed this day. He set it apart, and that he rested from his creation. All right, so the seventh day concludes. Now, this is why we would say our Saturday is the Sabbath day, because it is the seventh day, ending with the seventh day week. And by the way, mathematically, all of these terms are significant. The 7 days, 31 day months, 365 day year. All of these things, right, have a cosmos effect or significance. Okay. But anyway, so now he says God rests from his work. In other words, God rests. Now, what does it mean, rest? Now, if I go out and do work and then I come in and rest, I'm tired, right? Especially now that it is heat, but that's not what he's referring to. The word rest here needs to be understood. Really, you could say it's more of, the better words is to enter into what you have created. Actually, enjoyment might even be a better word. So for example, let's say if you labor for a house. And let's even say, because there are a lot of men like that will take great pride to build their own house, right? So let's say they build it. You lay it out the way you want it. You plan it, you lay it out the way you want it. Lay the foundation, the framing, the roof, plumbing, electric, all that. You do all of that. You take great pride in that. You work. You throw the paint up. But the finishing parts work slow. Paint, the carpeting, right? Window treatment. Then you move in the furniture. Then you set the furniture the way that you want to set it. Now, when he talks about resting, so you come to the point where I'm done. Everything is complete. The paint is up. Everything is done. The furniture is all in the place where I want it. So the rest would be, when he says I'm going to enter into the rest, it is not meaning that I am recuperating energy, but it is referring to I'm going to now enjoy the labor, the fruits of my labor. I'm going to sit in my family room and watch my TV. I'm going to go out on my deck, right, and enjoy the view of my backyard. I'm going to come into my kitchen and I'm going to prepare a meal. And I'm going to go up into my bathroom and I'm going to take a bath and I'm going to lay in my bedroom. That's entering into the rest that he's referring to. That's the rest. Well, when he talks about God entering into his rest, he now says, okay, God at this point now is among the creatures, right? He's among the creation. He's also going to be, as we're going to see further down, going to be fellowshipping with the man that he created all of this for. That is the rest. So the other question would be, do we, the term Sabbath becomes what, a lot of issue is today. Eventually, also let me say this, there is a psychological and physical. Now, the spiritual meaning we'll get to in a moment. But there's also a psychological and physical significance of resting. In other words, if you just work 7 days a week, you're going to wear your body out. But that's a fact after sin. The spiritual meaning is that God wanted you to enjoy it. The term Sabbath or Sabbath law, and I'm going to pick up this thought in the next study. I'm out of time, so I'm going to pick it up in the next study. All right, God, I'll see you then.